All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 13 of Blake&VishSports. I'm Blake. We got Vish. We got QC, the man, Grant Cohn. He came
What's
on
up?
today. Most of you guys all know him. Obviously, covers the Niners pretty in depth. Very knowledgeable on the team and the NFL as a whole. And today we got some interesting topics. We got quarterbacks. Everyone likes talking about that. Some Matt Stafford stuff. So we can get into the first one, and that's going to be what Boomer Esiason's recent Matthew Stafford comments. I'll let the Niners guys take it away. Whoever wants to go first, you think you got this one, Vish?
All right, so let's start. So let's break down what he said first, right? Recently, Boomer Esiason basically went on, was it a podcast, Grant? He went on a podcast or some radio show and basically said that he's hearing that Matthew Stafford wants out. Now, I don't know how connected Boomer Esiason is to Matthew Stafford. I've never heard him break news on Matthew Stafford, but he's a phenomenal quarterback, maybe like one of those guys who's not a Hall of Famer, but pretty close, and he's a really good player. And I'm the biggest Matthew Stafford.
Clearly, you just put him in the Hall of Fame. Wow. All right. Okay.
I mean, he made it to a Super Bowl. They say he was pretty good. I didn't watch him,
Oh, I thought you said Matthew Stafford was a borderline Hall of Famer. No, Boomer Esiason. Okay. No, you're right.
I mean, I'll feel that way one day about Matthew Stafford, especially if he makes the career moves that I expect him to make. But, yeah, so he basically said that he's hearing that Matthew Stafford wants out. And, for me, this is like, oh, my God, my birthday has come early. This is Christmas come early because I've been all over. Like, I really want Matthew Stafford to be the next 49ers quarterback. And it's because I think it's a mix of the fact that he's never had organizational structure, stability, and him in this offense with his physical talent would be just insane. So let's kick it off to you, Grant. Tell me, how did you feel when you heard about this? Do you think it's feasible for the 49ers? Do you think it's the move they should be making? I know you've been breaking it down a lot today, but give us something new right here.
It's definitely feasible. It is absolutely feasible. I don't think Deshaun Watson is feasible. Matthew Stafford is feasible if they want to do it. So it's there if they want. I think they would have to compete. I mean, they're not the only team that would want Matthew Stafford. And my question to kick it off is, what teams above the Niners in the draft order would also be interested in his services?
Washington.
Wait,
they're below somehow. I mean,
that's right.
Yeah, they would be a team that I think. Obviously, they need a quarterback. They have pretty good structure on the defense. Pretty solid O-line. Scary Terry McLaurin. That's one team that I really think could be interested in him. Because we don't know if Alex Smith's going to be back, but yeah,
we're going to get.
Regarding the football team, though, it is actually a really interesting point. We'll get into it a bit more in a bit, but it's a really interesting point only because Martin Mayhew now went there, and Martin Mayhew left the 49ers to go there, and Martin Mayhew is the one who drafted Matthew Stafford. So maybe there's a bit of a connection there still, and Martin Mayhew still wants him. I think the one team you really got to look out for is Denver. It seems that George Patton isn't convinced with Drew Lock for sure. Denver has theoretically those weapons, right? Cortland Sutton, before he tore his ACL, was trending towards being a top 10 receiver. Jerry Jeudy gets open. KJ Hamler is explosive as anybody in the NFL. Noah Fant, I almost called him George Fant, tackle, but Noah Fant is a really good player, and Garrett Bowles in their line is improved, and Fangio's on basically a year that they have to make the playoffs. So getting Matthew Stafford would provide that for him. But ultimately, I don't want to talk about those other teams, Grant, because those other teams are not going to get Matthew Stafford. The San Francisco 49ers are going to get Matthew Stafford. I'm going to keep saying it, and I'm going to speak it into existence.
Hold on. So let me just be the devil's advocate real quick. And Blake, Vish, you guys can rebut me, but you guys are Midwesterners. You guys have seen a lot more Matt Stafford. I'm looking from the Bay and I'm from a way far view. And all I'm saying is I've been talking to Coach Johnston a lot today. You guys may have interacted with him on Twitter. He's very smart too. And I got to say, he's opened my eyes a little bit. He's made some points about Matt Stafford, and I want to relay some things that we've been talking about. And you guys, I want to hear your rebuttal because let's just say the guy's physical gifts are not in question at all. One of the strongest arms of all time. It's not quite Josh Allen, but it might be. I mean, it's right there. And he can move. He's terrific. But is he a top 5 quarterback in the NFL? No. Is he a great quarterback? No. Is there some type of limitation there? Yes. What is it? I don't know. But what you can look at is the fact that he's never won a playoff game in his life. He's only been to 3. And you say, you know what? He's in Detroit. Detroit's a bad organization. Detroit. He gets this pass because he's in Detroit. Okay. And some of that's true. But you look at a quarterback who isn't as physically gifted, doesn't get the pass because of his gifts, but was also in a terrible organization. You know who I'm thinking about?
Yeah,
about
you're going to say Phillip Rivers.
No. About the same age.
Oh, same age.
Andy Dalton. He was in Cincinnati. Cincinnati stinks. It's a terrible organization. He's about 3 months older than Matt Stafford. Their stats, regular season stats, are freaking identical. Matt Stafford's 0-3 in the playoffs. Andy Dalton's 0-4. Matthew Stafford is better than Andy Dalton. But I'm just saying, you look at Andy Dalton, people are like, ugh. You look at Matt Stafford, people are like, oh my God, I'll give 2 first-round picks. I'll give 2 firsts and a second. So all I'm saying is, Matthew Stafford's cool. He is a top 10 quarterback. I like Stafford, but he's expensive. And I think there are legit questions about why he couldn't win at all in Detroit on a significant level.
All right, sure. Blake, why don't you rebut to this one first?
Yeah, so my thing with talking about the Bengals, they aren't the best organization, right? But Marvin Lewis at least brought some stability to that team, and they had some loaded rosters. Like, when you look back, they had some pretty good rosters. Those defenses were nothing to snuff at. Yeah, they were perpetually underperforming in the playoffs. You could say that and bring that argument up, and I would agree.
Hey, but Matthew Stafford is better than Andy Dalton. I'm not trying to argue. Yeah. I'm just trying to say, like, if you think of him in that context, like, he's not as sexy. He's not as sexy. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Like, compare his number to Dalton. Like, how much better is he than Dalton? That's all I'm saying. So it's not fair. I'm not saying Dalton's better. But, I mean, hey, why couldn't this dude ever win a playoff game? I mean, I know that's a terrible organization, but if Tom Brady were a quarterback on the Lions, he'd win a playoff game. If Russell Wilson were a quarterback on the Lions, he'd win a playoff game. There's that upper tier that just wins no matter where. So he's not in that. He's just not.
He's not paid like that tier currently. And 2, they're not going to have to pay the price to get him of what you would have to pay to get an Aaron Rodgers, a Russell Wilson, a Patrick Mahomes, and Deshaun Watson. So those are the 2 points.
That is true.
He fits right in that second tier with guys in his career. That tier was Tony Romo, Matt Ryan, Carson Palmer, Phillip Rivers, Big Ben Roethlisberger. They fit in that category. Big Ben maybe.
Okay, so we're talking tier 2 quarterbacks for sure.
Right. He fits there. And he's really physically talented, right? We all agree. And here's the big difference between him and, say, Dalton, because you have to look a little beyond the numbers, right? The first thing with him is that the playoff win thing is so like, well, if there was one.
Because Dalton melted down in the playoff. Dalton was awful in the playoffs. Stafford wasn't like that. Stafford wasn't like that. No. Stafford's better than Dalton. I'm not saying – I'm not.
Playoff win though.
I'm just trying to make it a point. Yeah.
If you remember against Dallas, they were basically a pass interference call away from winning that game. If that pass interference, like it was like the New Orleans Rams pass interference, but it's the Detroit Lions, so it's not as egregious because the Lions are going to lose. That's what the Lions do. But that's one thing with him. The other thing is he's never had a run game. He's never had a defense that you can rely on and say that's a terrific defense for an extended period of time.
1 year he had.
Right. And then he with his receivers, everyone says Calvin. Like Calvin's one guy. Okay, you have Calvin Johnson. You want Titus Young, who was getting arrested every week for a year in 2013. You want Nate Burleson, who was passed around the league for 3 teams. They had Tony Scheffler, Brandon Pettigrew. How many different guys has this guy kind of made it work with? And I think the other thing is you got to look at a guy's upside beyond his system, right? Andy Dalton played with some good play callers. Matthew Stafford has never gotten a schematical advantage that you would say is top notch.
Hold on. Let me stop you right there. The Andy Dalton thing was a red herring. Let's never mention his name again. He's off the point. Here's the comparison, because we're talking tier 2 quarterbacks, and Andy Dalton isn't in there. Stafford is. Who's a better quarterback, Matthew Stafford or Matt Ryan?
That's the question, right? We got to see Matt Ryan for 1 year with Kyle, MVP.
Who's better?
My point is Stafford, 2 years with Kyle, MVPs.
5 years younger. 5 years younger.
Right.
But who's better?
I'd say Stafford right now. Stafford.
Like, what do you think?
Right. We're saying like right now, like if I had to get either one of them, or you're saying career?
I mean, Stafford's 33. Ryan's 36. They're pretty much who they are. Who's better?
Stafford right now for sure. Just
Stafford,
dude. Okay. He's also like Matt Ryan's much more immobile, and you can see his age being like more shown. I feel like Stafford's the type of dude with his arm. He could play till he's like 37, 38, 39. Like he has the arm talent. He's pretty mobile for a guy that like he's not Lamar Jackson, but he's also not like Jared Goff. Like he's in that echelon of like pretty decent mobility, right?
Can I argue? Can I rebut? Can I rebuttal?
Yeah, sure.
Like what I'm saying, I agree. Everyone would have to agree that Stafford is more mobile than Matt Ryan, and Stafford is more mobile than Tom Brady. But Stafford takes more hits than they do. Stafford missed 8 games in 2019. Stafford finished 2020 with broken ribs. He's a tough guy, but I think the greatest quarterbacks have a way of avoiding hits, avoiding injuries, kind of like the Frank Gore effect at running back. And all I notice is that Stafford gets knocked around in ways that even Matt Ryan doesn't. I actually would. Okay. So go ahead.
I disagree, right? Because I actually think the biggest problem with the Atlanta Falcons the last 2 years is that Matt Ryan has gotten knocked around and Matt Ryan has taken beatings. And that's why I think Matt Ryan looks like a quarterback that everybody says he's no longer Matt Ryan. You know, he's a guy that's going to retire in a couple of years. Not everybody's Brady, blah, blah, blah. Because their offensive line play has been terrible. There's a reason they drafted 2 offensive linemen in the draft this year. It's because they have
got stacked a lot.
Right.
He gets sacked a lot, but he missed 1 game last year. I don't know if it was for injury or whatever. He might have been. He missed 1 game in 3 in his career.
Right. So Stafford's been documented, right, because he missed the 8 the year before with the back, and then this year because I think it's been prevalent in Niners Twitter because everybody started putting his name out there. So then people are commending his toughness, but that also gives you a little bit of an eye or wow, he's playing through like 7 injuries right here. So while it's kind of a double-edged sword that way, I think the ultimate thing and the reason that I think they're similar, right? I think Matt Ryan's a little better upstairs and Matthew Stafford's physical ability is better than Matt Ryan. I think the big thing is that Matt Ryan got that run game with Kyle for a couple of years and he did what he could do. Stafford is yet to have anything protect him other than the fact that Matthew dropped back 35 times. You just got to sling it. If we win, it's because of you. But if we lose, it's also because of you because we have nothing else to provide. And I think that run game would do him wonders.
I think Matt Ryan's a better quarterback than Matt Stafford, even though Matt Ryan's a little older. Matt Ryan won playoff games before Kyle Shanahan got there. I mean, Matt Ryan won playoff games when his coach was Mike Smith and Dirk Cutter and Mike Nolan. I mean, he's really good. You could argue he's underrated. Atlanta's not a great organization. Yeah, he had Julio Jones. Matthew Stafford had Calvin Johnson. I think there's a lot of similarities between the two, and I really feel strongly that Matt Ryan's a better quarterback than Matthew Stafford, although I would say they're both in the same tier, and you're splitting hairs. But Matt Ryan's 4-6 in the playoffs. He's a hell of a player, and maybe what's sticking out in my mind is I was at the game 2 years ago when he beat the Niners. It was very impressive. I mean, it was very gutty. He didn't have a lot. He had Julio Jones and himself, and he found a way to win. The Niners were flat that day, but it's funny when you're in attendance of something like that, it really colors your opinion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Blake, I like this point. I think you would agree with this one.
I mean,
true.
Yeah, true.
He had Drew Brees, but, true.
Oh, my bad.
And Cam Newton.
You got anything to add before we put a bow on this conversation? There
is one thing that I do kind of agree with on Grant, and I think he was kind of alluding to it with the Dalton thing, but there is the excuse for Stafford,
the Detroit pass.
Yeah, you give him it doesn't matter that he's never won. It's it's all if he had this, if he had that, and I do agree that it's some sense he has been let down by his team a lot. But there is the fact that you can't just play hypotheticals with a guy all day. And I think that's what you were alluding to, Grant. And I do tend to agree with that. Because I remember, I think it was 2013 or 2012 was when they had an insane defense. Remember Nick Fairley and Ndamukong Suh. Jim Schwartz was the coach, I believe, or DC.
Yeah.
And they had a pretty good team.
They did. They had a really good defense that year. The Niners kind of embarrassed them. But they went a year where they went like 15-1, didn't they? I mean, they had some
it was like 12-4
teams.
was their best year.
12-4. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
They won the NFC North. They beat Rodgers when he got concussed the game. Their defense was insane, but I do kind of understand what you're saying. It's like basically you're just saying like you can't fault Matt Stafford because he hasn't had a good scheme around him. Like,
and all I'm saying is like truly great quarterbacks kind of overcome that to a degree. And I feel like Matt Ryan has shown that more in Atlanta, even away from Kyle Shanahan, than Stafford has in Detroit, is all I'm saying. And I think we'd all agree that Matthew Stafford isn't a great quarterback. He's a very good quarterback.
So just to wrap up kind of this conversation, I was really going to just drive home that specific point, Grant. It's because none of us sit here and say, even though his physical talent says he's one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL, none of us are actually saying that. What we're saying is he's a guy 8 to 15, where with the right coaching, he could be one of the 5 best guys. He's not the Mahomes, the Rodgers, the truly transcendent type players. And then the last thing in regards to the 2014 team, so that was the team that lost to Dallas, right, in the wild card game. Was it, or was that the team that lost to New Orleans?
No, that was a team that lost to Dallas because then there was the Dez catch, and then there was the game which shall not be spoken of, the NFC Championship game. And then the Malcolm Butler, I believe it was.
Right. So the 2011 was the year they lost to the Saints, and then 2014 was the Cowboys game. And in that game, they did have a very rough pass interference call. I did want to reiterate that didn't go their way. So it's unfortunate to really
be the reason they lost. I don't know, man. There was a lot of time in that game, and that call was big.
It happened with 6 minutes left, and Cowboys scored on that possession. I think they went up 2 possessions and basically ended that game.
I mean, there's 60 other minutes. Like, I'm not going to say that it didn't
absolutely
hinder
not.
the game.
Absolutely not. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying there was another variable to that. I mean, obviously, I'm biased in this conversation. You won't find a bigger Matthew Stafford fan that's not in Detroit than me. But, so I just wanted to put a bow on it that way. So let's move on, right? We've been talking a lot about quarterback levels and quarterback salaries. And this is a topic that both Grant and Blake are super passionate about. And Grant tweets about it all the time. And we've had questions about it, and Blake loves talking about it all the time. And it's the topic of how much do these quarterbacks actually deserve to be paid, and how much should you actually pay these quarterbacks? Well, we've both hit those angles on each of our shows constantly, but we've never talked about which quarterbacks that we would actually pay and which quarterbacks deserve to be paid. So, Blake, I'm going to start off with you. Given that Grant kind of throws this number around of 15% of the cap is what franchise quarterbacks get paid, how many quarterbacks in the NFL would you pay that number, and which quarterbacks would those be?
I'm going with like 6 to 8, depending on the talent in the league. When I think of a guy that'll tier, do I want to pay him that much? No. I think we've seen that with Goff, and that with Wentz. We'll probably see that with Dak, although I think Dak's better than those two. But the point is, when you do pay those guys that are like borderline in that a little less below great, like that Matt Stafford, your team you can't build around that, right? And I think the 15% number is because it's basically like a quarterback getting paid more than 15% is like never won, or it's like something close to that.
13. But it seems like right now, like the going rate, if you're going to pay a quarterback now, you're paying that. If he's good, Dak, Deshaun, all these guys, Allen coming up.
So the closest to actually beating that, and it was 15.7. He was 15.7% of the cap was Matt Ryan.
That's right.
Until they collapsed in just historic fashion.
He played really well in that game too. It was not his fault.
Yeah.
That's true.
But
it could happen one day.
Dudes, depending on the talent in the league, right? Like right now, there's a lot more QB talent as opposed to like I don't know, a few years ago, you could say. But yeah, I'm going 6 to 8 dudes, and I mean, I'm kind of with Grant on this one of the recycling of quarterbacks, but I think it does depend on the situation. Like we've talked about Baker a lot, Grant, and should second contract. We can go with you can answer Vish's question, but I want to hear your thoughts on that afterwards.
Real quick, Blake, give me your 6 names. Give me your 6 names real quick. Who you said 5 to 6 guys?
Yeah, like Rodgers. Are we talking prime or like if everyone was up right now?
Today. today, who's up for contract? Who would you pay?
Who would I pay? Like over 15%? I'd say Dak. Who else is coming up? Like when Allen does, Holmes was, and Watson was, I would pay those dudes over. But would I pay the Goffs, the Daks, the Wentz? I'm trying to think of other names. Baker, probably not. No. Like those, like the middle tier guys. If they're borderline tier 2, like the high end of tier 2 is of what we say our tier 2 is. Those are the guys I'm paying over. But like the mid and below tiers, no, I would not.
I wouldn't really pay anyone. Here's the way I look at it. I mean, look at Patrick Mahomes. Like, here's the test case, because he's the best quarterback of all time, and he's up there, and he's going to be making this kind of money pretty soon. And like, he's on this deal. It's a 10-year deal.
Yeah,
he might win. The way I look at it, he might win one Super Bowl. He'll probably be the guy who breaks the record and wins a Super Bowl making 14 or 15%. But as long as there are guys as long as the rookie wage scale exists, he's gonna be working uphill, because there's always gonna be that guy making 3% of the cap who's almost as good as him on a way better team. It's like, all right, man, well, now you're 33. Good luck against him. And so like 1 year he might be able to pull it off and everything aligns and he doesn't have that many injuries and he has like 3 or 4 guys on rookie wage scales who are ballers, like a couple DNs and a tackle. But it's gonna, like, the stars are gonna have to align. That's what happened with Brady. It's what happened with Peyton Manning. They won their Super Bowls later. I mean, like, Peyton Manning got lucky once in Indianapolis and had to win one again in Denver. I just feel like, I mean, you don't want to just lose Patrick Mahomes. You give him the contract because he still has trade value afterward. But like, think about Josh Allen. They're going to give Josh Allen all that money. It's not going to work out. They could trade Josh Allen for not Trevor Lawrence, but whenever it's time, you could trade him for the first pick plus. It's like you could trade him for Trevor Lawrence. You don't need to trade Josh Allen now, but you trade him for the first pick in the draft and then another first round pick. Like, there's really good exit strategies. You don't have to pay a guy $1 billion. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't like the market for these topics. Right. It's like, you don't have to buy a Ferrari. You don't have to buy a Ferrari, man. Get a used car.
Here's my counter to that, though, Grant, before you go, Vish. Sorry. Sure. But how would it make the Chiefs? Like, how could they, like, the owners and the GM and the coach, because those guys don't have long leashes, right? Like, we're thinking in like a utopia, like, perfect world. There's no external factors. Like, how would they
trade Mahomes? So don't look at the Chiefs, because they would look at Seattle, okay? Because to me, the Chiefs are going to be Seattle in 5 years. So what Seattle has is a great quarterback. He's almost as good as Patrick Mahomes, if not as good.
Right.
And they're going nowhere, because he makes too much money. And Josh Allen, it makes a fraction of what he makes. There's always going to be guys who are as good or better than Russell Wilson who don't make. So what do they do? You know, like, what do they do? That's all. I mean, like, having Russell Wilson gives them stability, but they're not going to win a Super Bowl with him making that money. It's not going to happen.
So I think that both of you, I like both the points you made, and I think I'm somewhere there in agreeing. I think, Grant, you take it a step that I'm not ready to go to, simply when you look at marketing and just sustainability standpoint. Like, the point is, like, the Green Bay Packers the last 10 years, even though they haven't made it happen because, one, they haven't had coaching stability, a proper head coach and a proper schematical advantage for Aaron Rodgers, and two, Aaron Rodgers makes a lot of money. But I think if you look at a team like them, the reason why they would be satisfied paying Aaron Rodgers is that every single year they're a team that gets projected to be in that conversation. I'm sure every person in that locker room and that organization that year has conviction that this is our year. We're going to do it. And it's solely because they have Aaron Rodgers there. So to answer this question.
Now, it's fair to say that the dude hasn't won a Super Bowl since I was 23.
Right. True.
You know, it's true.
So for this particular conversation, what I would say is that the only guys that I would say deserve to be paid that franchise quarterback contract, I wouldn't even say it's the upper echelon of tier 2. It has to be a guy that you're convinced is going to make the playoffs every single year, and it's going to be a guy that you're convinced is marketable to the sense that he's one of those players that one, teammates gravitate to, and one's fans just gravitate to, where he's going to sell a ton. And for me, those guys in the NFL currently are Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers. I would put Josh Allen in that conversation. And then ultimately it's kind of a toss-up. I guess you could throw,
Would you put Watson in?
Rodgers? Yes, and Deshaun Watson. That's the fifth guy. And then I would say quarterbacks like maybe Dak Prescott, but I think that's a little bit of a stretch for him. And other guys, it's a little bit of a stretch. But I think those are the five. Dak, Lamar, those guys are probably just out of it. But for me, those are the only five that I would pay. And even Josh Allen is a risk. Like, you've had 2 years where he showed flashes of brilliant physical talent, and now you have 1 year where he's put it together with Stephon Diggs. So maybe even he's not ready to make that contract. But for me, Mahomes, Watson, Rodgers, Wilson.
One point real quick. I think it's important before you just trade a Hall of Fame quarterback because he wants a lot of money. You want to talk to him and explain, like, look, you may not understand, but if you want 14% of the cap, it's going to be very hard for you to win a Super Bowl, okay? Because it's never been done. And there's a reason that Tom Brady was always below 13, below 12. It's in your interest to work with us and be below 13 so you can win Super Bowls, because that's what you want to do. And if you can work with Josh Allen and find some way to, like, find him some extra money and I don't know, endorsements or something, keep the guy. You don't want to get rid of Aaron. You don't want to get rid of a Hall of Fame quarterback. But you also don't want to, like, price yourself out of the Super Bowl by giving him 17% of your cap. So, like, if you could work together, if you could explain to your young, superstar why it's in his interest to give a little money back and marry Giselle, something like that, work it out.
So regarding that, sorry, Blake, before you go real quick, I do think there's a way that could be done. It would just be that initial contract would have to be less, but the way you would explain it to him is that you would be constantly extending him. And when you're doing these extensions,
new signing bonus.
Guaranteed money. Right. And you're just giving him
like
constantly getting that new surge of cash. Right. Which is what Tom Brady basically did. The initial boost would be like $20 million less, but he's re-upping 2 years later, and he's getting another boost of $20 million. When Patrick Mahomes 5 years from now, maybe
years and give us a bonus. That works.
Right. So I think that's
creative. That's creative. Yeah, I like that. Because you don't want to trade a Hall of Fame quarterback at 25. It's ridiculous. So yeah, that works better. Okay, cool. I like that. So, and if he ever gets to a point where he's too expensive, trade his ass. Seattle, they should consider that. If they can't, if Russell Wilson is so intent on making this much money and he can't extend or renegotiate it, dude, go play for Detroit, dude, and have fun.
So
go ahead,
one thing that's holding me back from being on Grant's, like, very progressive ideas completely is, what if you draft that Christian Ponder, that Jake Locker, that Haskins, that Rosen, that Darnold? For every Lamar, there is those guys, and that's my one thing. So Grant, would you move off, like, if they're not good year one, do you move off them immediately, or do you give them like 2 years, or do you evaluate depending on the guy?
Well, here's the thing, like, do you think the Browns could trade Baker for Trevor Lawrence right now?
No chance.
If they could, would they?
Well, obviously, yeah.
Hell yeah. So that's what you want to do. If you have a quarterback like that you're not that sold on, like Goff or Baker Mayfield, who just went deep in the playoffs, I don't know. If you could trade him for the first pick and you think that guy's a sure thing, do that. But I guess what you can do, like what Vish and I are talking about, is give the guy the contract, lock yourself in, but be willing to trade him. Because it seems like a lot of teams are willing to pay through the nose for quarterbacks. So giving the guy the contract doesn't necessarily hurt his trade value. You can still trade him. But if you give Josh Allen the contract and he's making 15% and you try to win the Super Bowl and you find after 3-4 years, just like Seattle found out, that it ain't working, then you can trade him at that point. You give it a shot. But if it ain't working, trade him.
And
because why it's not working. You have to understand why it's not working.
It's not 15 too. It's like could be 18 or 19. So we're just saying 15, like arbitrary number, but like it could be even more than that too, right?
It goes up and up and up. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Mm-hmm. It is a Moneyball way of thinking. And speaking of which, just to Russell Wilson, to echo that point, Russell Wilson, this is the first year, they always, even when he was making that much money, they still always protected him with that run game. And they kept it simple for Russell Wilson with what they did on offense and said, Russell, run around and go win it for us late. And this year they tried to put a lot on Russell Wilson's plate, and it totally backfired. The last 8 games of the season, I don't know what field he was seeing because he was not seeing the field well at all. And it got Brian Schottenheimer fired. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say Brian Schottenheimer is this amazing play caller, but he's not terrible, and their run game wasn't bad. And if they were able to rely on their run game, it would have helped Russell Wilson a lot. So,
yeah, how many offensive coordinators did Aaron Rodgers get fired? They had everyone millions of dollars.
Yeah,
I remember the Dolphins being the head coach.
Yeah, he got people promoted. He got people head coaching jobs.
Ben McAdoo too.
Yeah, I mean, he got. It's a good point, Mood. He got Schottenheimer fired.
Yeah, yeah. So I think the ultimate approach to this is going to be right. We're just going to have to keep saying it. The big conversation that's going to tip the quarterback market. Someone brought it up in the comments. I'm going to see if I can find it. Gustavo, I saw. It's Baker Mayfield. He's the pawn that's going to basically set up this quarterback market because now the cap has fallen. Even though Baker Mayfield played really good, he's still a guy who needs this offensive line and needs this system, and he can still make big-time throws. I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback. I'm saying he's 14 to 18 in the NFL, and I think you can win with Baker Mayfield. You can't win with Baker Mayfield if he's making $30 million. You can win with Baker Mayfield if he's making $20 to $24 million. If the Browns sign him to $20 to $24 million, I think it's good. But if they give him that franchise-level quarterback contract, then we're going to have this problem for a long time in the NFL.
Let me make one final point. If your team needs, if you need stability, like say you're Robert Saleh and the Jets, you want Deshaun Watson. You need stability. You need to get to the playoffs. You need to keep your job. But if you've passed that threshold and you're like, okay, well, we got a great team, we got a great program, everything's in place, but we just are paying too much money on this quarterback and we can't break through. That is when you look at, well, we can get great quarterback play with dudes on a rookie scale. We can get great quarterback play with dudes who are 40 years old because you can't touch them. There are ways to get great quarterback play for cheaper, and that's when you start to look for it. But that's not exactly where Robert Saleh and the Jets are right now. The Jets should be trying to get Deshaun Watson or Matthew Stafford or whoever makes them relevant and consistent, right?
Same with the Browns, too.
Yes, yeah.
And it also depends on, to your point, the owner's view. Is this owner greedy and they're just I just want to sell, I just want to sell jerseys. I want to get people in the stands, or are they saying, I'm just going to go and make this really risky decision and it can look really good or really bad. So I think it's kind of to your point, right? It depends what the owner wants. Do they want stability or do they want to risk it for the business?
But again, if you're trading a guy like Josh Allen, you're getting the first pick in the draft plus a whole lot of other stuff. It wouldn't be, I think fans would, you'd be getting someone people would like, a Trevor Lawrence-esque player for your guy.
Yeah.
Plus.
Yeah. The question is ultimately, and the reason why I don't think Moneyball will ever work in the NFL is because it's too emotional. And ultimately, there's too much attachment, whether it's players, whether it's coaches, whether it's organizations. And if you trade Josh Allen, even if you're bringing in Trevor Lawrence, who could be the greatest quarterback prospect ever, that's what they say, there will still be players in that locker room looking side-eyed and being wait, you traded Josh Allen?
What
you did everything right?
Yeah.
He's on draft.
It doesn't perform either.
So I think I love Grant's way of thinking. I do think there's a point where NFL GMs and stuff have to look at his way of thinking to an extent. They could never go as far as he just went, but I do like that. So now we got to move on.
Final question. What does Seattle do? What does Seattle do? Because they are the example that I'm talking about. Seattle. You don't want to be Seattle. They've been trying for a half a decade. What do?
My thing with
fire Pete. Go ahead.
I was going to say my thing with that, for every Russell Wilson, there is that Mahomes, where those dudes are in the top tier. And you could make the argument for Aaron Rodgers, but I don't know, in my mind, this dude's going to go down as a top 5 QB. How do you trade that away? I agree with the Russell Wilson thing, though. Maybe
Wilson's more expensive than Rodgers if you look at their contract. Wilson is so expensive, man. So expensive.
So I'll put a bow on this with Russell Wilson. I think you got to fire Pete Carroll. You got to bring something new. That team needs juice. They've been the same thing. It was like Saints. like, as good as the Saints roster was this year, where was the juice going to come from to win the Super Bowl? Drew Brees is struggling in the playoffs the last 3 years. What can Sean Payton bring that's new? It's too much of the same. Look at what Matt LaFleur in this new offensive system, bringing a lot of what Kyle Shanahan did in Atlanta in 2016 to the Packers, has done for Aaron Rodgers. He's still the same Aaron Rodgers. He just looks like a new guy because they brought something new. So I think that that's going to be the ultimate thing. They got to get rid of Pete Carroll, and because they can't get rid of Russell Wilson, they're stuck with him. So you got to get rid of Pete Carroll and try to bring something new. Let's bring this back to the 49ers, right? Because Grant is a 49ers beat reporter, and we would be remiss if we didn't talk to him about his favorite topic, something he's been unrelenting about discussing every single day this offseason, and that is Jimmy Garoppolo and Kyle Shanahan's feelings about Jimmy Garoppolo. And whether you're a Jimmy Garoppolo fan or whatever you think of Jimmy Garoppolo, that's not what I'm here to evaluate with this question, because you can have your opinion of him. The bottom line is there just seems to be a feeling of mistrust that any person with perception can see that Kyle Shanahan has, and a reservation per se with Jimmy Garoppolo. So for a guy with reservations and a guy with supposedly extremely strong convictions about how he feels about his quarterback, he's kind of played the fence, and everybody's given him that excuse of, one, Garoppolo's hurt, and two, Garoppolo isn't that good, Kyle. We understand. How would you feel, though, in this offseason when Kyle has a very easy out from this quarterback if he says, hey, I'm going to keep him as the starter just because I couldn't find anything better? Grant, I want you to take this one first.
This is going to be a total role reversal. I'm going to surprise you with my answer. I'm going to be pro Kyle on this one. I'm going to see it from Kyle's perspective. From Kyle's perspective, he didn't want Jimmy. He wanted Kirk Cousins. They were desperate at 1-10. They made that trade because things were getting bleak in Santa Clara. They needed some positivity midway through a 1-10 year. They got Jimmy Garoppolo. He had that meaningless 5-game stretch of wins, and the whole thing was taken out of Kyle's hands at that point. They were stuck with Jimmy. Maybe in retrospect, they could have gotten out of it. I wanted him to trade him, but as you guys say, it's very emotional. It's a very emotional time. People love Jimmy. So he was stuck with Jimmy. What was he going to do? Was he going to piss off? I mean, the entire locker room was sold. The entire fan base was sold. What was he going to do? Say, I don't like him? So they kept him. Got hurt. Look, the way I look at it is you could move off Jimmy, but if you start a rookie next year, you could have another losing season. And then now you're putting yourself on the hot seat. Now you got 4 losing seasons in 5 years. I wouldn't even want to tempt fate. So you got to draft a quarterback, but you don't want to start him next year. I mean, unless you just want to mess around with your job security. Unless just you don't care. So now you're talking, okay, like we got to win next year. Jimmy might give us our best chance in the sense that he's a vet and he knows my system. We've been talking about Stafford's better, Matt Ryan's better. There are options. And if, I actually think that Kyle is going to figure out a way to get one of those things. But if he can't, and he says, like, ultimately, I need to keep Jimmy Garoppolo one more year because I don't want a rookie to start and I couldn't pull off the Stafford or Matt Ryan thing, I'd get it. I'd be disappointed because he should have had Brady at this point. He had any number of opportunities to get this right. But at this point, I kind of understand if he lets it go one more year. I would kind of get it, although I would hope that he'd find a way to get Stafford or Ryan or Rodgers.
All right, Blake, sending it over to you. How would you feel about this?
So with Grant's thinking, right, and here's my question to you guys before we go into this. Do you guys think Shanahan would be like fans would start turning on him a little bit if he did produce another losing season if they moved off of Jimmy?
Who knows?
Maybe.
As great as he's been,
very emotional. It's very emotional.
Like I feel like people in the media and fans kind of would be like, maybe is Shanahan the problem? I don't think he is. I think Shanahan's really good, and I think he's great. And it may be because of Vish's propaganda to me and, hyping up Shanahan all the time. And I do think he's really good and all. But I think there is that level of, like, somewhat security and stability.
He's brilliant.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Albert Einstein was brilliant. Was Albert Einstein a leader? No, absolutely not. He was in his room doing his thing. I'm just saying, like, would you want Albert Einstein to be, like, watching first graders at recess and keeping everyone in line? No, it would be ridiculous. I'm just saying it's two different skill sets, creativity, decision making. I have a feeling that Kyle Shanahan is a bad decision maker. You guys are young. You guys haven't realized that you basically are who you are by 25. You guys are still developing, but basically you are who I think it's an inherent trait, decision making, and I don't think He got it from his parents in the genes. You guys make very good decisions. I can already tell. You guys got it. But I think Kyle's going to be deficient. He is brilliant, though. Very, very, very smart guy. Brilliant.
So your
Almost
thing
as smart
is,
as us.
you're kind of on the thing of like, if he performs poorly again, you'd kind of think like, is he the right guy? Is that where you're going with that? Or you'd question him more?
I've been questioning whether he's a head coach. I know he's a great offensive coordinator.
Look,
he is just brilliant in terms of play design and conceptualizing the next evolution of offensive football. He's the best at it. But
look,
that's not being a head coach.
Let me jump in real quick here to answer that question. Because ultimately, if we do get to that point where the 49ers have a losing season, now we're projecting way ahead. But it comes to the point where even like the staunchest Shanahan supporter like me would have to give in somewhere and say, well, 4 losing seasons in five years, like that doesn't happen to the top level coaches, and we don't think he's Adam Gase. We think he's Mike Tomlin and Bill Belichick and Andy Reid. And if you're thinking that, well, then as Bill Parcells once famously said, you are what your record says, and his record does not reflect the level of coaching he's done. So at some point, you can't sit here in good faith and not ask those questions.
That's right. Yeah. So a lot of say, I mean, he's not going to get fired if he has a losing season next year, but he would enter 2022 on the hot seat. I mean, he'd have to perform. So I just feel like would I be disappointed if he didn't move off Jimmy? Yeah. But at the same time, I'd kind of get it because he can justify it. He's like, well, I mean, the guy has a winning record. I got to win. No one's going to beat me up in the organization or in the media for trying one more time. I got to draft a quarterback anyway. Obviously, Matt Ryan's a better option. Stafford is too. But failing that, he's probably their best option, even though he's really expensive. Oh.
So let me answer this question now because I got a little different perspective from Grant. I would be very disappointed, and I'd be very disappointed in Kyle Shanahan, and this is why. One of the things I admire the most about Kyle Shanahan is that he has strong convictions as a person. He didn't let anybody tell him to study Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes. He said, I have a plan. Kirk Cousins is my plan. I'm sticking to that plan. He doesn't let anybody tell him that he totally screwed up the Atlanta Super Bowl. He says, look at these plays. According to me, I made a mistake on these plays, but these other plays, you're wrong. I believe that I called that Super Bowl this way. And if you want to blame it on me, blame it on me. I'm going to believe that I did fine in it. Same way he feels about last year's Super Bowl. So we're talking about a guy who, it doesn't matter. He's very strong in his beliefs. And he's already shown to all of us. Like, everybody thinks Kyle's throwing his hands up in the air because it's cute. Look, he hates Jimmy. Look, Jimmy just missed a throw. Kyle just threw his hands up in the air. It's cute. No, it's not cute. It would not be cute if Mike Tomlin was doing that to Mason Rudolph. It would not be cute if Sean Payton was doing that to Taysom Hill. It's not something that I think Kyle should be credited for. It's actually something where you look at, I think with other coaches, the stigma would be, does he wear his emotions on his sleeves too much? Does a leader, like when Grant asked those questions about leadership, I don't agree with them. But I do see perspective because do leaders do those types of things in the middle of games? Like, what do teammates think about Jimmy Garoppolo at the time?
And Vish, I'm not writing them off. I'm asking questions. We don't know enough. I'm just asking questions.
So I'm providing analysis of where these questions come from, right? So there's that. And the other thing is the price tag is what doesn't make sense here to me. Like, I get the idea of keeping Garoppolo. I actually like Garoppolo. I think he's a solid player. I've liked what he is as a human being for the 49ers, and I've always wanted him to succeed. But at some point, you got to look at this price tag and just say, well, we can move off of him because he's not worth $27 million. Hey, let's get Andy Dalton. Let me draft my guy, and we're going to still win because of my coaching. His coaching got Robert Griffin from 4-6 to 10-6, and they went to the playoffs and turned Robert Griffin. Robert Griffin was a facade. He was never, like, no matter what, even if it was the injury, like, you don't drop off that much if you were never that level of player. And he certainly wasn't that level of player besides that rookie season. So ultimately, I think he's just got to believe in himself, believe in his coaching, and have conviction. Say, I don't like Jimmy. I'm not going to try this again with Jimmy. It hasn't really worked between me and Jimmy. Jimmy's a good player. Jimmy can go somewhere else and be a good player. I'm a great coach. I can be a great coach with another quarterback, and I'm going to work that way. It doesn't matter what the fans think because the results are going to happen on Sunday. And if I go 10-6 with Andy Dalton, if I go 12-4 with Matthew Stafford, if I go 10-6 with the rookie, nobody's going to care.
Well, hold on real quick. You guys like Trey Lance, right?
I like Trey Lance. Yes.
So say they draft Trey Lance with the 12th pick. He can't start.
I think he can.
Oh my God.
I mean, the 13 starts is questionable, but I think the perception of which guy can start. I mean, not saying you obviously because you have your own opinion.
But not just because it's Trey Lance and he played in 1AA football and didn't play this year, but because we don't know what the offseason is going to be like. There's still a pandemic. We don't know if there's going to be OTAs or minicamp or preseason. It still could be hard to get a rookie up to speed. It still is a complex.
Then don't draft Trey Lance.
Well, I'm just saying, like, you could draft Trey Lance. Maybe he is the right guy, but I just feel like you'd want to sit him for a year anyway. It's a complex offense. It's Shanahan's offense. It's COVID-19. I mean, you kind of do want a veteran, and of course you want Stafford or Matt Ryan, but failing that, I get it. It's just he is really expensive, and if you bring him back, you're pretty much saying I'm not going to win the Super Bowl next year.
Okay, so two things. Let's just hit Lance real quick. Just two things with that. One, I'm not just saying, like, I'm not a proponent of just getting Lance and having a bare bones quarterback room. I think if you get Lance, you would have to bring in an Andy Dalton. And I think Andy Dalton at $3 million, if you reload your roster, like let's say you get Jimmy, D Ford, Weston Richburg off the books, and you're paying Trey Lance on the rookie scale and you're paying Andy Dalton $3 million, you know how many free agents that the 49ers could possibly sign this offseason itself? Even after signing Trent Williams, Verrett, and Fred Warner, that would open up the entire free agency to the 49ers. Like Yannick Ngakoue now, if you can get him at a $10 million price tag, he's possible. So
I'm in for Andy Dalton, for the record. I'm cool with that.
And then the other thing with Lance is I'm not
saying. But at
the
same time, though, dude, it's easy for us to say, hey, trade Jimmy, sign Andy Dalton. It's tough to do it, man. I'm just saying. I would from Shanahan's perspective, it's like, dude,
agree.
Take a lot of heat for that.
Right. He's in an impossible position because he's damned if you do, damned if you don't, kind of. But the thing with Lance, I'll say, and the reason I say Lance can start day one only in this specific offense is because Shanahan's already dumbed it down. He dumbed it down for Robert Griffin. He dumbed it down for shown he can do that. North Dakota's No, you're here. No. North Dakota State's concepts, we've been over this. They're applicable to the Shanahan offense, some of the staples, and from play action, he's comfortable with that. 3, I keep going back to it. This guy does throw like a quarterback, and he does have throwing talent, but he can run the ball. And imagine this run game with him, Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, with that run-blocking offensive line.
Woo. Hold on. Let's back up. You don't have to be a Trey Lance expert to know that dude's going to make a grip of rookie mistakes next year because he's a rookie, okay? Going in a huge jump in competition. Are you willing to really drop 3-4 games because he's learning on the job? No. Absolutely not. His team's ready to go. His team's ready to win.
Grant, 2019 Jimmy Garoppolo made a ton of rookie mistakes, and they still were able to complete 14 to 16 passes with him on bootlegs and screens and one read.
That is true, but I think you guys are a little I think you're underestimating just how green this kid's going to be. Yes, he played in a system that's similar to what the Niners do. Yes, he's a good athlete. He's going to be green. He's going to be green.
I'm going to throw it to Blake on Trey Lance real quick because I don't know how much time he's watched Trey Lance. Because ultimately, making the green projection and all of that is difficult for us because we don't get to ever meet Trey Lance. We don't ever get to talk to Trey Lance. And we don't ever
I'm just saying this year, I think the only quarterback who should be starting week 1 is Lawrence. The other ones should all sit. And anyone who has to start is going to be, hey, good luck. Good luck, buddy. If it's Trask, good luck, buddy. If it's Fields, good luck, buddy. You guys should be sitting. I don't think that much of this class. It's Trevor Lawrence and everyone else.
You think
fair enough. Go ahead, Blake.
So to your point, Vish, like that's the Moneyball strategy that we touched on earlier. That in theory, right, like that's what they should do. But it's not as simple as like we can just completely abandon this and go without Garoppolo, right? Because to Grant's point, like Kyle kind of needs to put together a winning season. And like we've been saying, like even Tomlin with Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges somehow went 9-7. And if you were to have 4 losing seasons in 5 years, I don't know. Like, these questions would be getting asked a lot more than they already are right now. And we're still talking about him. This is pretty premature because this dude could go like 11-5, even in the NFC West, and just like make us sound like idiots right now.
He hasn't proven he can win on the Niners without Garoppolo. You get rid of Garoppolo, bring in someone else, and lose. It's just open season,
right?
It's open season. It's easy. You're an easy target. Easy target. I mean, I would have to take shots, even if I gave him the advice. It'd just be like, too easy. I got to do this.
So, Grant, do you think this is the play, though? So, like, keep Garoppolo for this year, and then if they say go like 9-7, 10-6, 11-5, whatever they go, they make the playoffs, then would you move on?
I think it's not what I would want to do. It's not. I want to get rid of Jimmy. I like Matt Ryan. I like Matt Stafford. But if they keep Jimmy, I think they think of it as kind of like 2017 Kansas City. I think that's what they're thinking. The final year of Alex Smith. And, Alex Smith either won the MVP that year or should have.
He was like the highest rated passer. So he was basically the MVP front runner for half the season because there was nobody playing as good as him. Yeah.
He was great. And there was nothing he could do to keep that job. And they knew it. It was like, dude, do whatever you want to do. It's Patrick Mahomes' job next year. We'll trade you. And the better you play. Or was he a free agent? I don't know what the deal was. He was gone after that year. I think the Niners kind of look at it that way.
Okay, yeah. I mean, ultimately, we got to move on. So I'm just gonna wrap this up by saying, like, I think Grant's thought process is actually probably the logical thought process here, and it's probably right. It's probably the best thought process for the Niners because there's also the optics perspective of for those that still believe in Jimmy and all of that, and for those that know what Jimmy is. If Jimmy goes and flops next year and has a really rough season, they can say, well, we tried to give him a chance. We hoped he would be healthy and we could recapture 2019's magic. It didn't work. Mutually part ways and do what we're talking about the next year. Or they could get a veteran quarterback. There's still a lot to go down. Maybe
if they get Stafford or Ryan, no one's going to be crying in the Niners.
Right. Of course. No. And my passion as a fan was really coming out there because I really believe in Kyle Shanahan and I still love my 49ers. Well, we'll see what happens, and I'm excited to see what happens. So now we're going to play a little game. We're going to play a QB carousel, and we're going to pick out 5 different quarterbacks that possibly, plausibly, probably not, could be playing for different teams next season. We're going to project where we think they're going to play and why. Let's start it off with the big man, Carson Wentz. Eagles just hired Nick Sirianni. It feels like hiring Doug Peterson all over again. Blake, where do you think Carson Wentz is playing his football next year?
I have 2 teams in mind. Neither are the Eagles. So my first one is kind of like my dark horse, and that's the Broncos. So they're in a position right now with Locke where he hasn't really shown to be all that great. They have the makings of a pretty good defense. They have the offensive talent, which we talked about earlier. John Elway loves that tall quarterback. Pretty strong, physical tools. He's trying to redraft. He's trying to find the guy who resembles himself. That's my dark horse that I think is kind of under the radar. And then the more obvious one that a lot of people have pointed to is the Colts, and that's that reunion with Frank Reich. He played his best ball with him, and once he left, he kind of trended downhill, and the roster definitely got worse. Right, but I'm thinking they need a quarterback. Brissett's not the move. I mean, he can come in for QB sneaks if they don't want Wentz to get hurt because that's what he pretty much did last year. But they have the roster and they have the cap space for him. And that's my main thing with them is they have tons of cap, and they actually are one of the teams that could afford to – I don't know how his cap space moves and how that all breaks down, but they can take the blunt of his cap hit. So those are my 2 teams.
Grant?
I'm sold on Indy. Indy makes perfect sense. The coach coached them before. They have cap space. The thing you got to know about Carson Wentz is he's really expensive. He in Philly, his cap number this year is 34.6, and then his prorated bonus is only 9.2. So any team that gets him is paying him $25 million. That's a lot of money for a guy who got benched. But Indy can pull it off. They know him. They can afford him. Indy makes sense. I don't know if Denver can do it. I don't know if Denver has the cap space, but
okay. I'm gonna say Philly, and I'm gonna say Philly because I think they hired Nick Sirianni basically as an attempt to try and make it work with Carson Wentz. And I think the primary reason why they're trying to make it work with Carson Wentz is because I think they have a $60 million dead cap if they get rid of Carson Wentz this season.
No, what I wanted to tell you is, and I've been talking about this with Noah Johnston today, Coach Johnson, is the post-June 1 trade. If you wait until post-June 1 and trade picks in 2022 draft, his dead cap is 9.2. So it's doable, but you just got to do it after the draft.
Right. Yeah. Right. It would have to be the post-June 1st because pre-June 1st is impossible because they have no cap room. They have no assets. They can't move Carson Wentz. And I'm actually going to tie this. This situation kind of reminds me of the 49ers' last attempt to salvage it with Colin Kaepernick when they had Blaine Gabbert. I mean, Blaine Gabbert's way worse than Jalen Hurts, and Colin Kaepernick, I think at that point is actually closer to Carson Wentz, what he showed last year, than people would like to admit. But I think it reminds me of that a little bit, where Jim Tomsula, I think, and them were ready to kind of move forward with Blaine Gabbert, and Colin Kaepernick was extremely expensive and his body was a little beaten up. And there was the whole thing of them hiring Chip Kelly and trying to salvage his career. So I think there's a little bit of similarities there, and there's a little parallel. Ultimately, I think when you hire Nick Sirianni and stuff and don't even hire Eric Bieniemy, who, I mean, some say he doesn't interview well. I don't know. I listened to his press conferences. He sounds every bit as impressive as any other coach.
It's about his history.
Right. But then Vance Joseph and Matt Patricia also had ugly incidents in their history.
They did, and they should. And in retrospect,
right.
Matt
So
Patricia,
So, and they hired Nick Sirianni. It feels like an all-in move to save Carson Wentz, and of course, whoever Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman hire, the media will always praise them as the next brilliant X and
also factory.
I don't think his contract is movable, honestly. Even though Frank Reich coached, I don't think anyone wants that contract because at $25 million, it's way too much. It's way too high. Too high.
Chris Ballard to me always feels like the guy that wants to be the winner in the trade. And I don't know if you're the winner if you can be the winner when you're trading assets and for that much money with Carson Wentz. It might be a 50-50 deal.
He's 13.8% of the cap at 25 million. It's just no. The guy couldn't even no. I think
agreed.
He might be stuck in Philly. He might be stuck in Philly in that contract. All right, let's move on to the next one.
So let's move on to the next quarterback, and that's Kirk Cousins. Grant, I'm going to start with you. Kirk Cousins, where is he playing next year?
Where is Kirk Cousins playing next year? I was just going to listen to Blake and steal his answer.
My thing
you go, Blake.
All right, I'll go. I think he'll most likely, like 80-95% chance he's staying in Minnesota. But if he were to move, I think it'd be the team that was high on him when he was leaving the now football team, and that's the New York Jets. One, they have the cap. Mekhi Becton, I believe that's his last name.
Mekhi Becton, yeah.
Mekhi Becton, yeah, sorry.
Cool.
Dude's a beast at left tackle. They have a high pick. They could trade down and then maybe take a stud, pick up some more assets. And I think we talked about this earlier with stability for Saleh. They kind of want stability, right? They have LaFleur as the OC. He would fit in that offense well. I think Kirk Cousins would be a decent play for them. And we talked about this earlier. He has 2 years, right, on his contract, Vish?
Yeah. 2 years. 2 years.
Yeah, I don't think he would command that Watson price tag. He wouldn't be nothing ridiculous or anything. So I think that'd be my sleeper of where he could end up. But what do you guys think on that?
Grant, before you go, I'm just going to jump in here because I'm 100% in agreement with Blake. If Kirk Cousins is not playing for the Minnesota Vikings, and I'm going to say the team is the New York Jets. And the reason I'm going to say that is because the Jets actually have a decent roster. They have a pass rush. They don't have corners. They have 2 starting caliber safeties. They're getting CJ Mosley back. They can most likely, if they get Kirk Cousins, draft Sewell and basically shore up their 2 tackles for the next at least 5 to 6 years. And they can sign one of these receivers this year, whether it's Allen Robinson, Chris Godwin, Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones, AJ Green. There's so many guys. There's so many guys I even didn't mention, Juju, that you can throw out there. And
not Juju.
Right. And so what you got in Kirk Cousins is a guy that's a perfect fit for this system. You've touched on it in the past. Robert Saleh thinks highly of Kirk Cousins' football acumen and his toughness. I'm sure Mike LaFleur, because Matt LaFleur, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan all love Kirk Cousins. I'm sure Mike LaFleur has similar feelings about Kirk Cousins. And what you do is you bring in Kirk Cousins and you follow the Grant Cohn philosophy and you draft a quarterback at number 3. Kirk Cousins, you have an opportunity to win and be a solid team for the next 2 years. He can teach this system, and you got a quarterback that fits this system and can set a culture. And then now you can bring in, if you think Justin Fields is going to be a superstar, you sit him for 2 years, teach him an offense, and with those physical tools, you can actually make him a superstar. So, yes, I think it's more than likely he stays with Minnesota, but I think Blake brought up the most interesting point, and that is that the New York Jets actually might be the best fit for Kirk Cousins.
Well, so you're saying that Deshaun Watson's not going to end up on the Jets?
I don't think so. I don't think it's a great fit for them either. They're a rebuilding team. Why would you trade away everything you've worked to get for Deshaun Watson and then not have enough to put around him?
Number 2.
It's true. That's true. Hey, I'm the only other team I was going to think was, what about Denver? Nah.
John Elway would get axed for that.
Like an Elway guy. He's not that Brock Osweiler, that Paxton Lynch. You got to be at least 6'4" if you're going to play in Denver. Those are the rules. I don't make them.
Okay, cool. Hey, I'm with you. I was not thinking the Jets. That's a good one. I like this game. I have nothing to contribute, but I like it. So let's go.
All right, let's go Matt Ryan. So this is an interesting one. Grant, you let me down a little bit when I sent it to you with Kirk Cousins. You weren't ready. I'm going to send it to you right now with Matt Ryan. Let's see what you got. Come on.
I think he's going to be on the Niners. I think this is the Niners' ace up their sleeve, that they're going to trade Jimmy soon. The fan base is going to freak out. They're going to draft a quarterback in the late first or early second. The Niner fans are going to be a little confused, like, is this our starter? What's going on here? And then Atlanta's going to take a quarterback with that 4th pick. They're going to take Trey Lance or Justin Fields, someone who can throw the ball while rolling out. And after June 1, the Falcons and Niners are going to make a deal, and they're going to send Matt Ryan back to Kyle Shanahan. I think it's good for both of them. I think it's good for Kyle. It's good for Ryan. I think it's going to work out. That's the way I see it.
Do you want to go, Vish?
Sure. So post June 1st, right? What you said makes 100% of sense. And if it's post June 1st, I would actually like Matt Ryan, because I still think Matt Ryan is a top 15 level quarterback. And I still think that there's a lot of things he does at an extremely high level from a mental standpoint. And I think culturally from Jimmy, like Jimmy's so-called best asset, right, is supposed to be his personality, his leadership, what he brings to the locker room and all of that. And Matt Ryan is one of the best guys when it comes to that. So
can't compare.
It's elite in that sense. But unfortunately, I have to have extreme take integrity here. And the next guy that's going to come up in our list, I'm already going to say, is the 49ers. And I think he's going to stay with the Atlanta Falcons, and they're going to draft a guy and then try to make a decision on Matt Ryan the subsequent year. Because I think Arthur Smith, the reason they hired him, because if they were going to tear this up, I think they would have looked to hire like a Matt Rule type, a CEO type who has experience in building strong programs. I think they brought in the play caller because they're looking to try and catch lightning in a bottle one more time with Matt Ryan. And I would want to give credit to my man, Wayne Potu here, who brought up Matt Ryan to the New England Patriots. And if he's not staying with Atlanta, which I'm like 95% sure he is, I think Matt Ryan to the New England Patriots would be extremely intriguing. When you're giving, like, the Patriots are the kind of the sleeping giant in this entire quarterback conversation. Nobody's inserting them, but Belichick quietly has cleared the books. The cap, they have a ton of cap space. They have a very young team. They're going to get like 5 very, very good players to coming back in this next year. And they have a ton of draft picks, assets, a ton of flexibility to do what they want. And Belichick's got this sleeping giant. Like, Matt Ryan would be a phenomenal fit there. Doesn't have the arm that Brady had, but he has enough of an arm to play there. He's a good fit for their system.
And real quick, Vish, the reason I say that I think they're going to trade him is his cap number is 40.9. And unless they're willing to extend his deal, give him a signing bonus, and lock him in long term, I don't see how they get that down. It's 23% of the cap, Vish. They might have to trade him, man. They might have to.
Maybe they might be forced in it. Well,
unless they're not worried about contending next year, they might not be worried about contending next year.
That could be the thing. Maybe true. Arthur Smith is trying to set a culture. Matt Ryan is a culture-setting player, and you do that and you draft a quarterback. So, Blake, Matt Ryan, where you got him? Where's he going?
So I'm the same thing with you. I think they're going to take probably the guy out of BYU, Zach Wilson. He seems like a likely guy to go there. They're going to keep Ryan, have him just basically sit behind him for a year, because I feel like that's the best way to develop a quarterback, unless it is like that blue chip prospect where you're ready to just throw him into the fire. But I'm very fond of the idea of having this guy sit for a year, and then if Matt Ryan gets hurt or he actually just forgets how to play football, you can bring in Zach Wilson. But I like having him there. They don't need to contend, right? Like, this roster's not really that good for contention right now. Their defense is kind of in shambles. I think they could tank in a sense that they're not like trying to get rid of Ryan. They're not going to completely build up their team. They're probably going to get like a top 10 pick again if they keep Ryan. And then basically after that, here's Zach Wilson. Here's the keys to Atlanta. You're going to be our quarterback for hopefully the next 10 to 12 years.
Yeah.
That sounds good to me. So let's finish it off with the guy.
That makes sense, actually. Ugh.
Yeah, with the guy that's so interesting for me in this conversation, and that's Sam Darnold, because I think Sam Darnold's variables in this situation go beyond just the fact that he could be a talented player that people might have their eyes on, like in the sense that, hey, I know, like, you know how NFL coaches are. I know you didn't work there, but I'm going to make it work with him. They have that level of kind of pride and arrogance and belief in themselves and their work. So they believe they can do it with the Sam Darnold. But the reason to me he's intriguing is because you got to make a contract decision on him. Nobody's taking his fifth-year option that pays him $25 million a year from now. So that means you got to make a contract decision on him in one year. So that's the most intriguing thing to me. Grant, where is Sam Darnold going to be playing his football next year?
The game is you ask Blake first, and I agree with him.
I know. I just want to keep throwing you under the bus right here.
Which teams need quarterbacks? Well, it's not going to be the Raiders. What about Denver? What about Denver?
He fits the mold. He's right. He's tall. Yeah.
He's blonde. He's tall. He's white.
Yeah.
Yeah, Darnold. I don't know. Denver. I think Denver. Are they in a position to draft a quarterback? Not really.
So before you go, I'm going to jump in here because I actually 100% agree with Grant. I think the best fit for Sam Darnold is the Denver Broncos. And I think that's because, one, George Patton, allegedly, is not totally enamored with Drew Lock. Two, John Elway was reportedly very enamored with Sam Darnold, and that was the one quarterback that they would have drafted apparently in 2018 if he fell. So that's the other thing. And three, I think that's the place that makes the most sense for Sam Darnold, because Denver kind of has that flexibility to kind of let him come there, compete, and make a decision on him financially. I don't want to say the Jets, because I think the Jets, it's just kind of a thing that you have to say right now. I don't think Robert Saleh, Mike LaFleur have really gotten into studying the entire process and who they want. And the other thing is, if you keep
hold on. You think Robert Saleh doesn't have a strong opinion about Sam Darnold right now?
No, I'm talking about the draft quarterback.
Sure.
Quarterbacks. Sure. He hasn't gotten into, well, this guy's available. It's just Sam Darnold that he's looked at. And
I'm just saying, because he was very diplomatic in his press conference today about Sam Darnold, but he game planned against Sam Darnold this year. I'm sure he has a very definite opinion.
Right.
I don't know what it is. I have no idea what it is.
And the thing is, I don't think you can read Robert Saleh the way you read Kyle Shanahan. Because Kyle Shanahan will just tell you like it is, good or bad. Robert Saleh is very diplomatic in how he speaks about anybody or anything. So everything he says, he's one of those guys that might push the needle a little bit more and exaggerate it to make it all sound very upbeat and positive. Right. But not to get off topic, the reason I don't think they keep him is you're Robert Saleh, brand new coach. You're Mike LaFleur, brand new offensive coordinator. Joe Douglas basically has been given a clean sheet because somehow Adam Gase is getting blamed for Mike McCagnon's horrible moves as the GM because they had a bad roster, but Adam Gase was supposed to win with the roster, but he's also a bad coach. I don't want to sit here and act like I'm a defender of him. But the ultimate thing is that if you keep Sam Darnold and Sam Darnold's not good next year, which he hasn't been that good his first 3 years, then you look bad. But if you take Justin Fields and Justin Fields isn't good next year, guess what? Nobody cares because you get 3 years before people actually make a decision on Justin Fields or decide. And those 3 years have already happened for Sam Darnold. So I think that if you're a new regime, it just makes no sense to me to not get your own guy in the building, even if you really like Sam Darnold, just because it resets your clock on when you have to be a contender.
So hold on, let me connect the dots. So Darnold to Denver, Cousins to the Jets, but they're also going to draft a quarterback. So how do they get Cousins? Is Cousins not worth the first? I guess Cousins not worth the first.
Not worth the first. Yeah, he's not worth the first. No.
He's worth like a second, right? A two.
No, he could go for like a future first.
Future first.
Like,
okay.
Color got 2 firsts and a second. Right? Like Kirk Cousins got to be more than that.
You're taking the contract too. 2-2 should be fair for Cousins.
Also, they saved $10 million in dead cap by doing it post June 1 anyway. So yeah, draft your quarterback, trade for Kirk Cousins post June 1, trade a 2022 pick. Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Blake, who you got? Where do you got for Darnold?
So if you would have asked me this yesterday, I would have said the Pittsburgh Steelers. But they signed Haskins today.
They did? Man, I'm tripping.
Yeah. Crazy.
Why? Why? Guys, that's terrible.
Good question.
He's terrible.
Yeah. So if you would have asked me yesterday, I would have said Pittsburgh. But if you would have asked me, since you're asking me now, I think one of the teams that kind of has a question mark that we haven't brought up, and I've seen in the comments, is Washington football team. And this just seems like a Washington type of move. I don't know what it is about it, but they haven't really been able to figure out the quarterback situation, or they always have question marks around it. It just seems like a Washington move to me. So I'm going there.
Good call.
Maybe bring it up in too.
I like it. Yeah.
So there's one more quarterback. I've saved him because obviously best for last.
And then I gotta go.
Right. And so we'll cover him, and then we're gonna end it because Grant's got to go again. Grant, we really appreciate you joining us.
A lot of fun, man. We'll do it again. This is great.
This was awesome. Hey guys, and as always, guys, thank you so much for watching our videos. Please like, share, subscribe. You know everything the normal YouTuber says. And we really appreciate you sticking with us. We'll cut this up and put it on our channel. So real quick, let's go Matthew Stafford. I'm going to answer this question right now because it's a one-word answer. I've been explaining it every opportunity I've had to talk about it on any sort of platform. I'm going to say the San Francisco 49ers. Grant?
Blake?
I'm going to go with
Washington. What about Washington?
No, he needs to be the quarterback in Washington has to have some swirling questions or problematic abilities like about him. It's just it's a tradition.
You said the whole Mayhew thing. Martin Mayhew, he drafted him. No, I'm telling you, Washington. It's going to be Washington. I don't know if they can afford him, though.
They're definitely a team. Yeah, but I think this is kind of the sleeping giant team that Vish mentioned earlier, New England. I feel like Matt Stafford's a Belichick type of guy. Pretty smart dude. He has the body. I would hate it because the AFC East would just be like
Wait a second. What's his relationship like with Matt Patricia? Because Patricia just went back to New England today.
I don't think he had a bad one. And the other thing is he's played in kind of a New England type, a pseudo New England environment with elements of the New England system. I think Blake's bringing up good points. Blake, don't bring up these type of points, Blake.
It was the fake Patriots, though, because like the way the disciples usually work for Bill, it's like they try to instill the Patriot way, but they kind of fail to miss the point. And I think Patricia did that. And I don't know. He just seems like a guy that him and Bill would be scary, man.
Okay, I like this, but since you did this, we have to have an extra bonus name to put in this list.
All right.
Jimmy Garoppolo.
Gosh.
You said Stafford's going to be on the Niners. I said Ryan's going to be on the Niners. So where the hell is Jimmy Garoppolo going to be? Vish, you want to start us off?
I didn't put Stafford on the Patriots. Thank God I didn't, because that's actually a really good point, Blake. We don't make good logical points about Matthew Stafford unless they're about him going to the 49ers. That's our rule number one.
I think Jimmy's going back to New England.
I think to me, New England and Jimmy is like a perfect fit. And I think the reason why is I don't think New England's going to get him at the $27 million price tag. They're going to get Jimmy Garoppolo at $15 million. Watch, they're going to make it happen. They're going to have a loaded roster about it. Nobody's going to complain about it because Jimmy Garoppolo is more than good enough to make $15 million. He's going to go back there, and I think they'll succeed with him because I still think Garoppolo is a good player. And, I don't think it's a bad thing for the Niners because it just didn't work out with the Niners. That doesn't mean reflect bad on anybody. It just didn't work out. What about Grant? I won't send it to you. Blake, where's Jimmy playing next year?
The one team I haven't said is your guys' team, the Niners.
That's a good bet. That's a good bet. Blake's got a very level head here.
I've been studying the QBs, man. I don't know. QB offseason this year is going to be crazy.
What about Watson?
Miami. I think it makes too much sense. I think they'd do it.
I think so too.
I like Flores a lot, and he wants to go there.
I think so too.
Blake.
About Rodgers. About Rodgers.
Let's go there.
Rodgers next year. He'll be.
You think he stays? You think he stays? Because his contract's ridiculous next year, man. Have you seen that?
I know it's a lot, but how do you move on from an MVP quarterback?
Well, they did draft this Jordan Love, dude. What's that about?
I think it'll be the season after. The season after.
Okay. Fair enough. That's all I want to know.
And then there is one more name. I don't know if you have to believe or not, Grant, but Jamal's been bringing it up. And where's Dak in this situation?
Dallas.
You think he'll stay in Dallas?
Probably
Dallas. I think Dak's going to get scared.
Washington does make a lot of sense for him because they'll pay for a quarterback. Washington is not that far away from actually competing with the big dogs in my mind. Besides,
I gotta say, I want to throw it out there. I do feel like there's a racial component in Dallas with Dak.
Yeah,
and in Washington, they're making it very clear that that's not what they're about anymore. They got Ron Rivera, they got Martin Mayhew. I think they'd love to have a black quarterback, and I feel like it kind of seems like Dallas is like, do we really want to have a black franchise quarterback? That's kind of what it feels like to me.
Washington never had that problem. They overpaid for McNabb. They overpaid to draft RG3. They drafted Haskins, so they've never had that problem.
He's a Rivera quarterback too. Right. He just seems like a type of guy that him and Rivera.
He's a hell of a quarterback. The problem is he's a tier 2 quarterback who's going to make tier 1 money. That's the problem.
I think you guys are taking it too far. I do think possibly there's a racial component, but here's the one thing about Jerry Jones: that dude is always playing it safe. He gets this kind of reputation of being aggressive, but guess what? He's going to get scared because of what happened this year with Mike McCarthy. And I think Dak, also him getting injured, he's going to want to get the money, and I think they're going to find a way to get it done in that 5 years.
Everything I've said about not overpaying quarterbacks, you could say that he's practicing that. Why do I want to give this guy 15% of my cap when we couldn't win with him making 3% of it? Why do I want to do that?
I'll just give Tony Romo 15% of my cap and not Dak Prescott.
Right. Yeah, I got to bounce. This was great.
Go. Thank you so much for joining us. This was awesome. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us.
For Sammy Sosa, thank you guys, and send me the video.
For sure. I'll share with you on Drive.
All right, love you guys. Take care.
All right.
See you, Grant.
So Blake, you want to take
a couple more questions or other topics?
Yeah. I think we can do a couple questions here before we go.
We got
this setup? Or?
This is fine. How about 1:30 we're done? But if you guys have questions, let us know. I mean, we've been talking quarterbacks, and that's always very fun, very, very fun.
If you want to talk this weekend's games, basketball, anything, hit us.
Yeah, hit us with some questions. But first, I think we could do one more quarterback, Vish, before the questions start coming in.
You want to do Cam?
I wasn't thinking him, but I'm down to do Cam, yeah. What do you think?
Who were you thinking?
I was thinking Trey Lance, because I already have a team in mind. I have my destination set on one place.
All right, go ahead. I don't have a destination for Trey Lance, so I want to hear yours first. And then
my destination, number 9, the Panthers. Teddy Bridgewater is going to be gone. He'll be there this year. Trey Lance might come in at some point in the season. I think they're going to draft Trey Lance. Let him sit. Let him develop a little bit more. He doesn't have that much game experience. And I think they're going to hopefully move on from Teddy because I think they realize he's just not the guy that's going to win. I think he's very average. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that sounds plausible. I think Denver is also another team to keep an eye on whether they draft a quarterback. And I think all 4 are going to end up going in the top 10. We'll have to see as the process gets closer.
Lance is the 4th, the supposed 4th, right?
Right. For Cam Newton in regards to him, I'm gonna say he goes to the football team. I think that Ron Rivera, that comfortability, Scott Turner, I think that's gonna be the place to go. And they might draft a quarterback or do something in that sense. And I think that Adam Schefter has already reported something of the sort, which is why I'm pretty convinced that he's going there.
A little reunion with Cam and Rivera would be interesting. If I'm a team, though, I don't know if I would sign Cam. I just don't think he's that good.
I see. Okay, I'm a little passionate.
He's an NFL player. He's an NFL caliber player. Like if he's on the bench.
I'm gonna dispel this. Like, what did Cam have around him this year? Right, Tom Brady did not look good with New England, and it was a better supporting cast than what Cam had this year. It was a little better offensive line, and Julian Edelman was actually healthy and playing. So I think that Cam Newton didn't play that terribly this year. I think he was fine. And, he's always had some questions with his accuracy and process here and there. He's still a big guy, phenomenal athlete, great runner. And I still think that you can win with Cam Newton.
So I do agree with your point, and I think that is something that doesn't get talked about. They have the worst receiver room, and they have the worst tight end room, like by a long shot. And it's not really debatable. I would say that Brady's weapons the year before weren't that much better. It was like Julian Edelman played some games. That was like the main difference between the two. So I wouldn't go as far to say it was like significantly better. But I will say that, yeah, that doesn't get talked about enough. My thing with Cam is his body's only continue like wear and tear down. Yeah, I just don't really trust his arm that much. I think he's had too many surgeries. And I think like after the first couple years of surgeries and watching him play, I was just like, dang, this dude used to be so much better. Like his arm, he can still get the ball there, but his like mechanics are all messed up. I don't know, man. I just don't. I think Washington's a good team though. That if they don't get if they don't strike or if they strike out in free agency with like the bigger name guys, he's very plausible to go there.
Fair enough. I tend to argue it's just I think with Cam Newton, I think people have prematurely decided he was wrong, he was done, and I think the perception has been that he's done and he's been covered that way. So if you don't watch like every Patriots game, like the thought process that any person's naturally going to have is Cam Newton's done, and I think that he hasn't gotten the excuses that other quarterbacks would have gotten in that exact same situation. I'm not saying he's still a top 10 quarterback, but I still think he's good enough.
Interesting. So do you want to do questions now then that we covered?
Sure, let's hit a couple questions. And do you see any that you want to hit here? We've gotten quite a few.
Trying to think of ones we haven't covered.
There was one about Trubisky.
Yeah, we could do that one. That's a good question. I think he'll stay at least for the next year. My thing with them is, do they really have any better options? Like, they could draft a guy and then he's behind a garbage O-line. Are they still going to have Allen Robinson? I think they'll probably run it back with Trubisky. Do I think they'll ever win with him? No. I just think that's actually impossible, but I think they'll probably run it back with him one more year till they can actually get like more talent around a quarterback. So that way it's not like a David Carr situation where they're just throwing him onto a rosterless or a talentless roster.
Agreed. I think he's going to stay in Chicago, and I think it's because he showed something in a specific offensive system in the last 7 games of this season, and that was when they went to kind of the Sean McVay approach of ton of bootlegs, ton of play action, move the pocket, under center stuff, which was away from the Matt Nagy kind of RPOs, Patrick Mahomes shotgun offense. And I think he looked good enough where they drafted him 3rd overall. He showed a spark of a little bit of something. He played pretty well in the playoff game. You got to go back and maybe take another chance with him and see what happens. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Just don't pay him too much money.
Just one more year, though, for me. One more year. I think the writing's on the wall that he's really not going to be all that great. And I'm with you on the thing that he's better just using his legs, because that's probably his best asset right now. And they don't have a line. I remember the 2018 year. It's not like he was, sitting in the pocket and just like picking apart defenses. A lot of their offense was just having Jordan Howard brute force for 3 yards up the middle, and then Trubisky getting outside and making plays with his feet. And you're just going to have to play like that if you actually want to like have somewhat of a product, somewhat
of a successful product with
yeah, exactly.
We'll take this one. I've seen a couple Car Mariota questions on there. Yeah, Gruden is nuts if he does that. I don't know why people are so enamored with Marcus Mariota. Like, did you see the man throw the ball for those years at Tennessee?
Yeah.
He can't. I know he looked great against the Chargers. Probably the best I've ever seen Mariota throw the ball, but he's nowhere near as good as Derek Carr. And Derek Carr played like an almost top 10 quarterback this year. Mm-hmm. I know he's kind of got a weird personality, but Derek Carr has a really, really strong arm. He can move. He's got really, really great physical traits, and that would be really stupid for Gruden to do. And I just think that Gruden can't be that stupid. And I say they keep Derek Carr, and Marcus Mariota to me is not a starting option.
I'm with you. So the whole thing with Mariota's this one game against the Chargers, and that's what people are basing it on. And when you look at what he did with the Titans, right? They were kind of a lackluster team. They did make the playoffs with Mike Munchak and the smash mouth exotic offense that was just nonsense. When they replaced him, right, Tannehill instantly took that team on a huge run. They were 500. They didn't look like they thought they were gonna be like one of those 8-8, at best 7-9. And then Tannehill kind of brought them from the dead, and they just started going crazy, right? So yeah, I'm not on the Mariota hype. I think Carr proved he's really good this year, and they're gonna only add better pieces around him too. I like him. I think they're good. I don't think they're going to draft a guy, but yeah, I still think Gruden I'm kind of with this guy on Gruden is their team has fallen apart at the back half of the year, the last couple of years. Like they beat the Chiefs, they beat some pretty good teams, and then they just fall apart. I don't know what it is.
That's John Gruden though. That's John Gruden to the T. He has the worst, I think, December win. I think his December win percentage is under 500. John Gruden's teams always come into the season with no expectation. By mid-November, they're like 9-2.
They're like, wow,
7-4. They're like, wow, look, John Gruden has done such a great coaching job. And then they collapse in December, and everybody's like, see, Gruden sucks, 8-8, blah, blah, blah. So it's classic Raiders fashion, and Gruden is upholding to his own standards. Do you see any – there's quite a few in here. I say we take one more. Do you see one that you particularly want to hit here?
Yeah. There was one that I'm very a strong opinion on this one. And do you want to go first on it?
Yeah, so we're thinking on the same wavelength because it's the exact same question I wanted to answer too. And yeah, I think he's elite for sure. He's still 100% elite. I think the question is, and a lot of people got clouded in this judgment. And I have to say I was one of those people. I didn't really trust what I was seeing always. And, I took into the fact, well, look, he's doing it without the weapons and their scheme isn't that good, blah, blah, blah. He's not Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers or Josh Allen. You can't have him throw the ball in every play of every game because guess what? He is 6 feet and he doesn't see the field as well as a quarterback of his level should. So ultimately, I think that with Russell Wilson, he's 100% elite. But I think for them, I think Seattle had the right formula. This let Russ cook movement was a sham. We did a video on it. Actually, I think it's our first video on our channel. We said that there was a problem with this let Russ cook, and it was the fact that Seattle didn't have an identity. And at that time, Russ was playing brilliant, but Seattle's defense looked terrible. They did a full 180 midseason where their defense started playing good, and Russell Wilson wasn't playing really well at all. And so ultimately, is he an elite quarterback? Absolutely, but Seattle just has to recapture the formula of run the ball, play defense, and let Russell Wilson make magic happen 17 to 25 times a game. And if he does that, you'll win the game late. And it's a good formula, and I think it's more sustainable than let Russ cook.
So I'm with you on that. I still think he's certainly elite. I'd say he's probably the 4th or 5th best quarterback right now. And I think a lot of it was due to Schottenheimer. I mean, their offense was basically deep ball, and if not, go 4 verticals every play, just send everyone deep. Their O-line is actually it's been this way since they traded it was Britt, I believe, was their center for Jimmy Graham.
Max Unger,
yes. Ever since then, their O-line has really not been all that great. And I'm kind of on what I'm going to compare it to is what we saw with McCarthy and Rodgers. People kept questioning, is Rodgers really all that great? Like, why was he getting hyped up so much? Their team wasn't doing as good. And basically they move on from McCarthy and they're like, oh my gosh, Rodgers is still doing great. Like where was this the last few years? Basically a coach has been too long and you just need to change the scenery at that point. I think they need to get an offensive minded coach. They need to rebuild the O-line. That's my thing. I still think Russell Wilson's very much elite. And I think in a couple of years when they do get a new coach, we'll be like, has he always been this good? And I think it'll be similar to an Aaron Rodgers situation. He won't be as good as Aaron Rodgers. That's obviously certain, but it'll be similar in the sense that people will start to see like him starting to put up the stats again.
Yeah. So I know there's a lot of questions, guys. We've kind of reached our time threshold. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see each and every one of you the next time we go live. We really appreciate the support. We'll cut up this stuff and turn them into videos soon. So please do check them out. Please like, subscribe, and share our content. And check out Grant's content too. I'm sure all of you already do. He's fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. If you got questions, tune into our next live stream. I promise we'll answer them. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of your night.